The reason why we want to develop our resources and get them to market is to do exactly what you're saying, is to address the healthcare, the education, and the vulnerable sector. I just want to put it out there. If we had built Northern Gateway, which was approved and canceled by Trudeau, if we'd built Energy East, which was advanced, but then pulled the plug because they couldn't see their way through to getting approval, if we'd built Keystone XL, if the federal government had advocated for 1 minute on our behalf to keep that pipeline going, we would have had an additional 2.5 million barrels per day of production today, which would be generating about $55 billion per year in additional GDP, of which governments would be getting about 40% of that. You can build a lot of schools and hospitals and roads with that kind of money. For generations, they laughed at us from their towers of power in Ottawa. They sneered, secure in their belief that Alberta would never find the courage to chart its own course. In their minds, the province was a permanent colony, shackled by unbreakable chains to the federal government, a disposable pawn in their rigged national game. They were so sure of themselves, so smug in their control. Well, I hope they were watching, because the world as they knew it just ended. Alberta didn't just get off the mat. They flipped the entire grand chessboard over. A revolutionary new alliance has been forged with Japan, and the old order is in ruins. The doors to a new era of freedom haven't just been opened, they've been blown off their hinges with explosive force. And just like that, Ottawa is a phantom, a powerless ghost haunting the sidelines while the real main event unfolds in its own nation. The humiliation is absolute. For the federal establishment, this isn't just a lost contract, it's a cannonball of defiance tearing through the hull of their ship. The entire balance of power has been irrevocably altered, maybe forever. What Alberta just did isn't just politics, it's the stuff of legends. It's a move so audacious, so breathtaking, that it will be studied for decades. And I am absolutely thrilled to announce that for the first time in its history, the province is seizing its own destiny, forging a future on its own terms. This is a strategic energy alliance with a global superpower, an agreement that slices through Ottawa's bureaucratic rot and proves to the world that Alberta doesn't need a permission slip from anyone to be a global leader. This isn't the Alberta of old, timidly asking, "Oh, please, may we have a seat at the table?" No. This is Alberta planting a flag in the world stage and roaring, "Hear us now, Japan, we are ready to lead." And Japan, a nation starving for stable energy after years of punishing global uncertainty, didn't even bother to glance at Ottawa. Not for a second. They went straight to the center of power, straight to Premier Danielle Smith. Her victory announcement on social media said it all: incredibly successful meetings in South Korea and Japan. She met with the Japan Gas Association, which represents over 200 titans of industry, and their verdict was unanimous and crystal clear. In a world adrift in chaos, Japan needs a steadfast anchor, and they want Alberta to be their unbreakable rock. This partnership is designed to do one thing: shatter America's decades-old stranglehold on our nation's oil exports. The discussions are for a true joint venture, a powerful collaboration that will allow Japanese refineries to transform Alberta's rich, heavy crude into the fuel that powers the world. For Japan, it represents a golden opportunity to declare its independence from the perpetual turmoil of Middle East oil and the treacherous waters of the South China Sea. And for Alberta, it is a gateway to a massive new market and a powerful, reliable ally for generations to come. This single, bold stroke will fundamentally redraw Canada's energy destiny, finally diversifying our trade away from a single and often unreliable American partner. This is what true power looks like. This is real influence. Alberta's vast oil sands are no longer just Canada's national treasury to be plundered at will. They are now a premier global power broker's chip. Alberta is already dealing with America, and now they are building something monumental with Japan. Make no mistake, this assertion of freedom sends a cold shiver of terror down the collective spine of the Ottawa elite. It proves beyond all doubt that a single province, not the bloated central government, can forge its own powerful alliances on the world stage. That is the very definition of nationhood. It is the definition of statehood should the proud people of Alberta ever choose to join America. And if Alberta can achieve this once, they can achieve it again and again and again. That isn't just leverage, it's a revolution. That is real, untamed power. The oil sands are not Canada's piggy bank anymore. They are a global bargaining chip. And believe me, that brand of raw, untethered independence is what the establishment fears most. And I love it. I absolutely love it, because they are proving they can build their own destiny. Japan knows that with Alberta, they are in safe hands. This is the new world order taking shape before our very eyes. It's like Trump's America is once again leading the free world with strength and confidence, and Alberta is rising right there alongside it, while the old powers in Ottawa are left choking in the dust. President Trump already demonstrated his unmatched strength to Japan when he sealed that massive trade deal with them. This new alliance with Alberta is being built upon that very same solid ground of trust and proven leadership. The world has seen Danielle Smith's record of action. They know Alberta is the real deal. Remember the trade deal between the United States and Japan? Investors were ecstatic. That deal included a tariff rate of 15% on imports, including automobiles from Japan. Later, President Donald Trump announced another deal, one that would see Japan invest $550 billion in the U.S. He called it perhaps the largest deal in history. That is the kind of strength and action the world respects. Japan knows better than to rely on empty promises. They need real oil from real partners. And where do they find that certainty? Alberta. This is a complete game changer. By looking north to a reliable partner, Japan is hedging its bets against global instability and sending a powerful message that Ottawa can no longer be trusted. And it's not just Japan. Alberta is also strengthening its ties with Trump's America, advancing a crucial cross-border pipeline deal and reinforcing the very energy bond that Ottawa has spent years trying to sabotage. Alberta, I say to you, well done. I am so incredibly proud of you. Alberta is rising to the occasion with Trump's America, and together they are leading the charge for total energy dominance. That is a championship combination. I am genuinely, profoundly happy for Alberta. My only wish is that the rest of this country would wake from its slumber and see what is happening. The world respects strength. It respects what Alberta stands for. And that is where the utter humiliation for Ottawa truly begins. They were asleep at the wheel, so blinded by their own dogma they never saw it coming. Alberta didn't just step out of line, they went global. They inked a historic deal and left the federal government to read about it in the morning news. It's like a rebellious teenager sneaking out in the middle of the night, but instead of coming home grounded, Alberta returned with a billion-dollar strategic partnership. Way to go, Alberta. Meanwhile, Ottawa has been reduced to a pathetic footnote, a bystander watching from the sidelines, clinging desperately to its hollow climate pledges, while Alberta forges real, powerful, world-changing partnerships. It's a pathetic sight. And again, I've said it 1,000 times, I am just so unbelievably proud of Alberta right now. This just proves what the rest of the world has already figured out. When it comes to real economic leadership, Ottawa is a ghost at the table, an irrelevant relic of a bygone era. Alberta's deal is a shining beacon for every other province. If you want to prosper, you have to do it yourselves, because Ottawa would rather see you fail than succeed on your own terms. But the biggest shockwave of all is what this seismic shift means for the United States. For decades, Canadian oil was a captive resource, a one-way stream flowing south to prop up U.S. markets. Not anymore. Alberta's deal just blasted a new global trade route wide open, a superhighway from Alberta to Asia that leaves Ottawa in the rearview mirror where it belongs. Alberta and Japan are building a new axis of power. Trump's America is back in the driver's seat of the world, and together they are rewriting the rules of global energy. This is more than business. This is a testament to what bold, fearless leadership can achieve, and President Trump respects nothing more than competent, fearless leadership. Ottawa is losing its grip on Alberta's oil sands, the very resource they have demonized, treated as a liability, a dirty secret to be whispered about in their sanctimonious climate speeches. Way to demonize your country's economic engine. A brilliant move. In reality, the oil sands are the very backbone of Canadian prosperity. They have pumped billions upon billions of dollars eastward into the pockets of Ottawa and Quebec. Saskatchewan and Alberta are economic titans. You would think they would have been treated with some measure of respect, but while Ottawa was lost in its ideological fog, other nations saw Alberta's true value. Japan saw it, while Ottawa was busy bowing to activists who wouldn't survive a single Canadian winter without the gas and heat that fuels their lives. Alberta is showing the world that real energy security matters more than virtue signaling hashtags. The oil sands are vast, stable, and proven. When Japan invests, it's not buying barrels, it's buying certainty. That is the polar opposite of what Ottawa delivers. Alberta is proving that its resources are a lifeline to the world, while Ottawa continues to treat them like a national embarrassment. It just makes my head spin. To Ottawa, to Carney, and to all the fools who created this mess, you started this rebellion, and now it is here to stay. The more you try to bury Alberta, the more the province proves that the entire world values the very thing that Canada's own government despises. That is not weakness. That is strength forged in spite of your failures. The reaction across Canada has been explosive. On social media, you can feel the ground shaking. In Calgary and all across Alberta, people are celebrating in the streets. Finally, they have leadership that doesn't need to ask for permission from Ottawa. Everyday people feel vindicated. Alberta can stand tall, make its own deals, and build its own future. But in Ottawa, there's panic. The political class despises this because it shatters the fantasy that they are still in control. For years, they tried to cage Alberta with taxes, caps, and bans. And now Alberta is saying, we are done playing by your rules. They are free, and it terrifies them. Even premiers in other provinces are watching this and thinking, if Alberta can do this, if they can sign on the dotted line with Japan, what's to stop me? What's to stop Saskatchewan or Newfoundland from looking for their own partners abroad? In fact, Saskatchewan's Premier, Scott Moe, is already planning missions to Japan and South Korea, proving Alberta isn't an anomaly. It's a pioneer. This is just the beginning. Alberta refuses to be chained by Ottawa or the carbon tax mob any longer. Step by defiant step, Alberta is proving it can forge its own destiny, free from Canada's exploitation, and ready to claim its own future. Maybe they become a sovereign nation. Maybe they join the United States. Either way, the undeniable truth is that Ottawa's grip is failing. Alberta's triumph exposes the rot at the very top. The louder the cheers in Alberta get, the more the elites in Ottawa tremble. That is the sound of their old world crumbling and a new power rising from the West. And this deal doesn't just shake up Canadian politics, its shockwaves ripple across the entire globe. Because if Japan starts buying big from Alberta, Asia suddenly has a stable, secure alternative to the Middle East's endless turmoil. And that changes everything. The United States under Trump is energy dominant once more. Alberta is rising right alongside. And together they are drawing a new map for global energy. That isn't just energy, that is geopolitics. Alberta might be one province, but with the right allies, it becomes a powerhouse on the world stage. Way to go, Alberta. I'm just so damn proud. This is what happens when true leadership embraces opportunity instead of strangling it with fear. President Trump warned Canada they were falling behind. Alberta's rise is proof he was right all along. The truth is stark. Trump's America is winning. Alberta is winning, and Ottawa is being left in the dust. That is the new reality. Fearless leadership is reshaping the energy world, and the old, tired order in Canada is fracturing. It's crumbling to pieces. The future belongs to the bold, and Alberta just proved it to the world, and I'm so incredibly happy for them. Alberta's pivot, energy, autonomy, and the new geopolitics of Canadian federalism. Introduction. Within the Canadian Confederation, a deep-seated and persistent tension exists between the nation's resource-rich provinces and the federal government, a friction point most pronounced in the relationship between Alberta and Ottawa. For decades, this dynamic has been defined by competing visions for the country's economic and environmental future. At the heart of the issue lies the development of Alberta's vast oil sands, an economic engine for the province that simultaneously represents a significant challenge to Canada's national climate objectives. This conflict has crystallized around a series of high-profile, now-defunct pipeline projects, Northern Gateway, Energy East, and Keystone XL, the cancellations of which have fueled a potent narrative of economic obstruction and federal overreach within Alberta. In response, the province has initiated a significant strategic pivot, moving to circumvent federal channels and forge direct international energy partnerships, most notably with industrial powers like Japan. This essay will provide a multifaceted analysis of this evolving situation, examining the economic grievances fueling Alberta's push for autonomy, the federal government's policy rationale, and the profound political and constitutional consequences of the province's emerging strategy of economic statecraft. Alberta's pursuit of these international alliances is more than a mere search for new markets. It represents a fundamental challenge to the traditional dynamics of Canadian federalism and reflects broader, transformative shifts in global energy geopolitics. The economic foundation of provincial grievance. The core of Alberta's frustration is rooted in a clear and quantifiable economic argument. Proponents of pipeline expansion in the province articulate a narrative of immense lost opportunity, directly linking the cancellation of major projects to foregone prosperity. According to industry advocates and provincial leaders, the combined failure to construct the Northern Gateway, Energy East, and Keystone XL pipelines has prevented an estimated 2.5 million additional barrels of oil per day from reaching global markets. The projected economic impact of this shortfall is staggering. It is estimated to represent a loss of approximately $55 billion per year in additional gross domestic product for the Canadian economy. This macroeconomic loss translates into direct fiscal consequences, further deepening the sense of grievance. It is argued that federal and provincial governments would have captured roughly 40% of this new economic activity in the form of royalties and taxes. This foregone revenue, amounting to billions of dollars annually, is presented as capital that could have been invested directly into critical public services. The argument posits a direct trade-off. Stalled energy projects result in diminished capacity to fund healthcare, expand educational programs, and strengthen social safety nets. This narrative effectively reframes pipeline debates not as abstract environmental policy discussions, but as tangible decisions with immediate consequences for the well-being of citizens. By connecting pipeline infrastructure to the funding of schools and hospitals, this perspective has created a powerful political argument that resonates deeply within a province whose identity and prosperity have long been intertwined with the fortunes of its energy sector, federal imperatives, and the counter-narrative. To fully understand the complexity of the situation, however, it is essential to analyze the federal government's position and the broader counter-arguments that have shaped its policy decisions. Ottawa's approach is not born from a singular desire to obstruct Alberta's ambitions, but is rather the product of a complex calculus involving international commitments, constitutional responsibilities, and a long-term vision for the national economy. A primary driver is Canada's commitment to international climate agreements, including the Paris Accord. The federal government operates under the imperative to manage the country's overall carbon footprint, and the intensive emissions profile of the oil sands presents a significant obstacle to meeting those targets. Approving massive long-term fossil fuel infrastructure projects is seen as fundamentally incompatible with a national strategy aimed at decarbonization. Furthermore, the narrative of unilateral federal cancellation often oversimplifies a far more intricate reality. Projects like Northern Gateway and Energy East faced formidable and multifaceted opposition that extended well beyond the federal cabinet. These challenges included rigorous and lengthy environmental assessments, significant legal challenges from Indigenous groups asserting their constitutional rights, and staunch political opposition from other provinces, notably Quebec, through which the Energy East pipeline would have passed. The federal government is constitutionally obligated to manage these interprovincial and Indigenous relations, and the political and legal risks associated with overriding such widespread opposition were immense. Finally, the ultimate fate of the Keystone XL pipeline was a decision made by the United States presidential administration, highlighting the geopolitical vulnerability of relying on a single export partner. From this vantage point, the federal strategy can be interpreted not as punitive, but as a pragmatic response to a confluence of environmental, legal, and political pressures, coupled with a forward-looking industrial strategy to diversify the Canadian economy away from its heavy dependence on a volatile global oil market. The strategic pivot, Alberta's economic statecraft. In response to this perceived federal obstructionism, Alberta has adopted a bold and assertive new strategy, circumventing Ottawa to engage in direct economic diplomacy. This pivot towards forging international partnerships, particularly with energy-hungry nations in Asia like Japan and South Korea, is both an economic necessity and a profound political statement. It signals a clear intent to reclaim control over the province's economic destiny and to operate with a degree of autonomy typically reserved for sovereign nations. This approach fundamentally tests the traditional boundaries of provincial authority within the Canadian Confederation, where international trade and foreign relations are formally the purview of the federal government. The logic behind this strategic pivot is compelling and mutually beneficial. For a nation like Japan, which is heavily reliant on energy imports from the geopolitically volatile Middle East, Alberta represents an ideal partner. It offers access to a vast, secure, and reliable energy reserve located within a stable democratic nation, effectively de-risking a critical component of its energy supply chain. For Alberta, the benefits are equally transformative. A direct partnership with Japan provides a crucial alternative to the perennially bottlenecked North American pipeline system and insulates the province from the political unpredictability of its southern neighbor. Accessing Asian markets could also allow Alberta's heavy crude to command higher prices, closing the long-standing differential between Western Canadian Select and other global benchmarks. This strategy goes beyond simply selling raw materials. Discussions have reportedly included the possibility of joint ventures in refining and upgrading facilities, a move that would allow Alberta to capture more value from its resources and export higher-margin products. This direct, sophisticated engagement on the world stage is an explicit assertion of Alberta's economic sovereignty. Consequences for Canadian federalism and global energy markets. The long-term implications of Alberta's strategic pivot are far-reaching, posing fundamental questions for the future of the Canadian Federation and the configuration of global energy trade. By successfully negotiating its own international energy deals, Alberta is establishing a powerful precedent that could inspire other provinces to follow suit. The source material notes that Saskatchewan's premier is already planning similar trade missions, suggesting the potential for a more decentralized model of economic foreign policy in Canada. This trend could progressively erode Ottawa's traditional role as the sole intermediary in international economic affairs, potentially leading to a significant realignment of power within the Confederation. It brings to the forefront complex constitutional questions about the division of powers, as provincial jurisdiction over natural resources collides with federal authority over international commerce. Globally, a successful Alberta-Asia energy axis would have a tangible impact on trade flows. It would create a significant new supply route, offering a stable North American alternative to traditional energy suppliers and potentially altering the strategic calculations of nations in the Indo-Pacific region. This move positions Alberta not merely as a subnational entity, but as a consequential player in the international energy market, capable of influencing geopolitical dynamics. The ultimate success of this strategy, however, will hinge on a number of critical variables: the long-term global demand for fossil fuels in an era of energy transition, the willingness of international partners to make massive capital investments in new infrastructure, and the resolution of the intricate legal and constitutional battles that are likely to unfold within Canada. Conclusion: the escalating tension between Alberta and Ottawa over energy policy is more than a regional dispute. It is a defining challenge for 21st century Canada. Fueled by deeply felt economic grievances stemming from the cancellation of critical pipeline infrastructure, Alberta has embarked on an ambitious and potentially transformative path. Its strategic pivot towards direct international engagement is a calculated maneuver designed to secure economic prosperity while simultaneously asserting a new level of provincial autonomy. This strategy directly confronts the federal government's national climate agenda and its traditional authority over foreign policy, setting the stage for a period of profound political and constitutional uncertainty. While the final outcome remains unclear, Alberta's actions have already redrawn the lines of debate. The province's quest for economic sovereignty is not only reshaping its own future, but is also forcing a national reckoning on the balance of power, the future of the energy sector, and Canada's very identity as a confederation in a rapidly changing world.